let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to the Getting Started session where Kurt is going to spend a few minutes talking about some of the core features at Manifest Investing. He'll be glad to take a look at various aspects and features of the site, but tonight we'd kind of like to focus in on the core of the stock research and then how you actually deploy that and put it to work in dashboards. So with that, I'm going to just say, Kurt, take it away.
Good evening, everyone. Typically on these Getting Started sessions, we walk through each section of the website and I point out various features. We'll probably skip most of that tonight unless anyone has a specific question, and we'll zero in on dashboards and a bit of stock search and stocks and try and make a few dashboard guided decisions. When people come to Manifest Investing, I imagine they come with a question or a problem that they want to try and solve, and we hope that we can help with that. And I think we have a wonderful website that's steered towards discussing stocks and mutual funds and helping you make decisions. So with that out of the way, we can move into a few things. When you sign in recently, I'll just point out a few recent changes. You might see a pop-up in the corner of the home page after you sign in, and we've been adding a few just small questions that we'd like to get some feedback on. So if you have a second, I'd encourage you to answer one of those if you see them pop up. We'll have them up 3 or 4 days out of the month and have maybe a different question each month. So if you have a minute, feel free to give us some feedback. And if you have other feedback that you'd love to send, you can always click on the Help tab and either contact us at support or Manifest Investing at manifestinvesting.com. And while we're on this page, I thought I'd point out the glossary again. It's a new feature in the last few months that we've added to try and make it easier to find some of the terminology that we use at Manifest Investing. So if there's a term that we use tonight that we don't cover and you wanted to find a bit more, click on Help, Glossary, and you can grab a letter alphabetically and jump down to it and find hopefully some answers in that. Also in the past few days, I'll point out something before we get too far into dashboards. On each dashboard page, let's do it from a public one. We'll grab a public dashboard. Oh, Mark, I broke the public dashboard graphs. That didn't even come up in my test suite either, so we'll have to point that out. We've made a few changes to the graphs in the past few days, and my test suite didn't catch that they weren't showing up on the public dashboard pages, so we'll get that fixed. But when we get to dashboards, I'll point out some changes that we've done there as well. We've replaced some of the graphs and allow you to mouse over them. So, one thing that I often use the site for, my wife does the majority of our investing in our household through her self-directed cafeteria plan through the federal government. They have all of 5 choices, so their choices are rather simple. And we don't spend a whole lot of time reallocating hers, but from time to time I spend time on my son's CSA. And one of the reasons that I use the website to invest is I want to try and find companies that I can shove into his educational account, and hopefully by the time he's ready for college we can afford the astronomical price that they're estimating I'll need to save for his college fund. So that is typically my goal when I'm actually using the site to invest. I'm sure other people have very different goals from mine, but that'll be one of the things that we talk about tonight when we talk about dashboards. And that's a problem that I often come to the site with and looking for a solution for. But when you come to your dashboard page, if you're new at Manifest Investing, you won't have any to begin with. One of the easiest ways to get started is simply click Add Dashboard. It's also on the sidebar. And we'll just start with an example of how to go through this form. A name's required. You don't have to add a description, but if you'd like, you can add a simple description. This will be used at the top of your dashboard when you see it, and if you make it public, it'll also be shown on the public version of the dashboard. So if you are sharing a dashboard, perhaps with a club or a group of investors, you can add a description there that is appropriate. If you have cash, you can add cash for your dashboard. There's no need to add a $ or any commas to separate anything. The public and published flags allow other people besides yourself to see them. The first, if you click public, will provide a slug, and that slug is simply an identifier at the very end of the URL. We make one and create one that will work automatically, but you can change it to anything you like. And once you move out of that field, it'll tell you whether or not that's an acceptable URL. If you don't provide an acceptable URL, if you put spaces or other invalid characters, it'll tell you that you can't use that URL, or if it's already been taken. The publish flag will make it available from the public dashboard section of Manifest Investing. When I clicked on the public dashboard on the home page, there's also another link at the bottom of that where you can find more dashboards to view. So we'll leave those alone for now and move on down to holdings. You can add as many holdings as you like through this holdings tab and add shares for each, although shares aren't required. So we'll just add a couple there, and then we'll come back and do the advanced options in a minute. Click Submit, and your dashboard should be available. At this point, the sector diversification and size diversification are sort of meaningless. We'll go back and add some more. So we can go back and edit this, and I'll demonstrate one of the advanced options. So you have a tracking, you just want a watch list and you want all of them to have an equal value for today. We'll take out the shares of each and hit Submit. I may have to start up a new thread if we slow down tonight. There we go. And now we have $100 in each along with our cash. So one of the things that I was talking about earlier and wanted to point out, we've recently revised these couple of graphs, and we use the same graphing that we use for our company chronicle charts. You can mouse over the slices and get a pop-up. And on the sector diversification, when you mouse over a slice, it'll tell you how we're calculating that slice. In this case, sales growth above 12% is a faster growing company, typically a small company within its industry. Medium is between 7 and 12%, and large or a slower company is sales growth below 7%. So if you want to delete a dashboard, it's as simple as clicking this button. We'll provide you one warning. Once you delete it, it is gone. So please don't delete it unless you're certain. I have had to recover one from our database, but it's not a job that I enjoy doing. So we'll delete this one. And then we'll step into a dashboard that I had created already. This will be a starter example for us tonight. This isn't a real cash portfolio. It's just an example I set up that we might want to take a look at and see if we need to make any decisions on. One of the common topics that Mark and especially Ken Kavula talk about is the idea of a very simple approach to investing using your dashboards and letting the dashboard guide your decision making and really not having to make too many decisions. Come in, you take a look at it, and what they typically say is click on par and sort, and you'll take a look at the column and what they call the scorecard often. And in this case, we have a number of companies that Manifest believes are not going to grow as fast as many of the others. They're not in our sweet spot. They're not in the target range. And on top of that, our average line down here has a par that's outside the sweet spot. And when I'm managing my personal portfolios, that's typically my indication that I probably want to take a look at something and perhaps make some decisions on that dashboard. In this case, it's probably pretty easy to take a look at the dashboard and see what might be causing an issue and where we might need to make a decision. But before we do that, we'll just copy it to the worksheet and do the same thing here. And then we can play around with our dashboard and not have to worry about making changes through the edit page every time. So in this case, Mark, when you and Ken talk about this, how do you approach it from the dashboard standpoint?
Well, again, as you've already shared with the audience, we're basically looking at this portfolio. We like to look at the portfolio in its entirety. And as you've already pointed out, the projected return of 9.7% is a little bit light. Ken refers to the card off to the right as the report card. And the report card we focus in on, and we do this during every single dashboard diagnostics session, we want to see enough forecasted return. So that 9.7 is a little bit light. We want to see enough quality. The quality is okay, but it could be a little bit higher. Our experience with portfolios is that quality needs to be probably in the 70s, more times than not. And we actually know of some pretty good investment clubs that have, they're actually closer to 80 when it comes to the quality rating. And again, just as a quick reminder that anytime that's color-coded in blue, any of those companies that are color-coded in blue, they're in the top quintile, the top 20% of all companies, and we refer to them as excellent. Anything in green, you can see the couple at the bottom, they're green. That means they're still good. They're in the second 20% or the second quintile, but we'd be a little bit less in love with the ones that are green than the ones that are blue. And then there's a few in the middle there that are a little bit more frisky. They're more like average companies. So those are the first two we look at, and then we also look at the growth rate, that 7.7% that Kurt's now pointing to there. We really want that to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 11% overall. So literally you'd be taking a step back from this portfolio saying, I need a little more return, I need a little more growth, and wouldn't hurt to have a little bit more quality. That's what this portfolio is saying to me.
So with those thoughts, we'll probably make just a quick move and perhaps decide that we'll take a look at UniFirst and Papa John's. We'll pop those out of this, and that'll leave us some cash, and then we'll go shopping. And one of the quickest ways to go shopping before you actually hit your broker's account and go shopping, I like to click on the stocks, and we can quickly find candidates here. But as we were discussing right there, Mark suggested that we look at growth as well as quality and par. And the stocks page simply limits our candidates to the sweet spot and quality above 65. So while it's a great stopping point or a one-stop shopping list for ideas, we can do better by using the stock search. So we'll go to the stock search, and we won't limit it to the sweet spot. We'll go down here and we'll say we want a higher quality, and we want a decent amount of growth. And we'll use the manifest rank and see what we get. Maybe a little bit too aggressive on our par being outside the sweet spot, so we'll trim that back a little bit. The sweet spot right now is 17.2. So we still have quite a list to look at right now. And
one of the things I would let me just interject for a moment. With our overall market average in the bottom half of the long-term,
that's the other one I had on my list.
I would put in a financial strength rating of probably 80. Limit the field to the best financial strength companies, and that's just to avoid heartaches. You'll see that that'll trim the list quite a bit.
So that tightens it up a bit, and then we can come back and perhaps revise it one more time, and also go out and perhaps take a look at what the community of CAPS investors is a Motley Fool service. And it's a great way to gauge which way the rhinos are headed, perhaps you might say. they rate them up to 5 stars, and you can say I want 4 to 5 stars, and Caspi is their all-star performers at the cap service, people who consistently make picks that are above average or picking in the right direction, whether a stock is going to decline or advance. So that's an important point, an important item to add as well. One thing that we've noticed, though, is that people tend to be a little bit rosy-eyed when they're looking at this, and you have to hunt pretty high on that rating. So we'll do a quite high on that and see if we can tighten this up. So using those, we're looking for companies that have higher growth, that have great financial strength, EPS stability, good quality and par. We've got a couple of great ones to look at. Any of these come up on your screens lately, Mark?
Well, I see one. The fifth one down is one that is really attracting a lot of attention. The company is AeroVironment, ticker symbol AVAV. It is one of the most frequently chosen stocks by the participants in this year's Ground Hog contest. Now, as we say that, we know some of the people are being a little bit more aggressive than they might be with their own personal dollars. So you have to keep that in mind. But this is a company that is involved in the manufacture of Department of Defense hardware, including drones. And it is a company that has attracted a fair amount of attention. Very highly thought of at the Motley Fool by the stock pickers, the all-stars.
So one thing you can do once you're at this page is we scroll down so that we can see the all-star and the total players and all-star performance here. We can see the star rating. Those are a couple of items I look at just to make sure that I'm not trying to fight the market or sentiment, I suppose. And you can scroll down and take a look at the Chronicle. Any of these items, while I'm here, I'll point out that any of these can be turned off. So if you want some clarity on the graph or you want to look at just one item, we can take a look at any item on the graph. So.
And by the way, that projected relative return probably explains our community's interest in this stock, because it's between 5 and 10%. It's in the sweet spot.
So to get some of that second-hand opinion, I'll almost always click through and simply scroll down at the Motley Fool. Let me get the right point here and see if there's any recent commentary. It's not always the best commentary, but it's a great starting point for me to find some research. Obviously, your broker will have news articles, Yahoo will have news articles, but just simple things that we click through from our website to take a look at and see what the community at large believes about this stock. I find it an invaluable resource to help prop up a decision that I'm making. So back at Manifest Investing, Mark, would you perhaps comment on the technical analysis side of a company briefly? And if we need to, I can swap back to you.
Well, why don't we go back to the dashboard itself, if you can.
Go ahead.
Or are you switching the screen to me?
Nope, we're going back.
Okay. One of the things I wanted to point out is that, as you go shopping for stocks for this particular portfolio, you might want to go down to the sector diversification and make sure that you're not accumulating something that you're already over-concentrated in, and that's not the case here.
No, I actually remembered that as I checked it off in my head and forgot to mention it as well.
Yeah, we know it's got a decent growth rate, but there's no industrial representation down in the sector pie chart, so it's actually a pretty good diversification move for the portfolio. So why don't you go ahead, and we can take a look at technical stuff in a few minutes if you want, but why don't you go ahead and just show how to tinker with this portfolio adding AVAV.
I don't remember exactly what the price was, but AVAV, we can add a holding quite quickly. Simply add the symbol, add the shares, click add, and you'll see the two items highlighted that changed. Your cash changed and your stock was added. And we brought our par up, we brought our growth up, and the quality up as well. So those have helped quite significantly. And we still have some cash left to shop with, so we could perhaps go back to our stock search and take one more look at that. Of course, I did not save that search. Shame on me.
Well, I'll tell you what, go down and do manifest rank greater than 99.4. We'll pick one of those. You're entering just one number and hitting search. And I'm going to just lobby for taking the top one. Let's do Cognizant Technology.
We'll take a quick look at Cognizant.
Yep, $70. Yeah, you can just buy 100 shares of that. Well, maybe 50 shares based on that portfolio you had up there.
Yep.
So 50 shares of Cognizant will be about $3,500. And
so we'll go back and we'll view our worksheet one more time. That was CTSH, Mark?
CTSH.
And with that change, we've bumped our par up into the sweet spot. Our growth is up near 11%, and our overall financial strength and EPS stability are still pretty good. So,
does anybody out there have any questions, or you can either enter them on the tab or by raising your hand? Like to see something else demonstrated here? And again, the two companies that Kurt set aside, he didn't blow them away completely. The other thing to take away from this is that you're actually you're performing these what ifs without disturbing the original portfolio. He's going to show you what to do with that in a second. But
yep, while we're here and before we perhaps move on to some other discussion about what else we might look at, one thing you can do once you're done tinkering, you can either save it back to the original dashboard, which will replace our Getting Started Dashboards example with Save to Original, or you can save it to a new one, and it'll bounce you to the dashboard that you've just saved with a timestamp for the date, or excuse me, for the title. You can go in and you can edit that and remove this long string.
okay, Linda Schuler would like you to basically slowly show how you did the worksheet thing.
Sure, no problem.
Take it from there.
If we go to My Dashboards, from your My Dashboard home, you can click on View Worksheet from the sidebar. If we're already in a dashboard, for example, we started at Getting Started, our dashboard example. On the sidebar, there's a few links. One is Copy to Worksheet, and one is View. Copy will copy the existing dashboard, the one that you're at, to the worksheet, and View will view the existing worksheet without copying what you're looking at to it. So you only have one sandbox to play in. You'd have to, if you want to play with a different dashboard in the worksheet, you visit that dashboard first, and then we copy it to the worksheet. So if we copy this to the worksheet now, it'll replace. We click on that.
Yep, go ahead.
And we're back.
Nancy wants to know what the red and green stuff is.
Sure. The red and green allow you to bounce companies out. One of the first things we did when we came in, and this is back to where we were, since we saved our changes to a new dashboard, we had UniFirst and Papa John's. If we knew we just simply want to get rid of them, we don't even want to hang on to them, we can use the red X, and that'll delete it. If you mouse over any of these icons for long enough, it'll tell you what they do. So the green will make it inactive, which will push it down to the bottom. The red will delete, and you can edit a holding, and that'll bounce it over to the sidebar, and you can change the number of shares and edit that. So you can also edit the cash. It'll bounce it out to the sidebar, and you can edit it there. And then if you want this one back up, or you simply want to delete it, you can make it active and push it back up, and it'll highlight what changes have been made. So one of the other things that one of the other examples that I wanted to use tonight was my CESA account, and my child's only 2, so I haven't had a lot of time to invest, but it's one that is a common decision-making thing for me at least 2 or 3 times a year, where I have to come in and keep trying to max out our contributions each quarter or each year. Hopefully they don't cut them down too much, but this is one of the accounts, and I have to start another one here in about a month for our second child, so more decision making to do. But much the same way that we did that, I tell myself I have some cash that I'm going to add to this account, and then I simply go stock shopping. Go to the stock search, and like Mark did, my favorite way to get started is simply that same thing, 99.4 or 5. I tend to use caps and a high CASPI rating, and that's it. As Mark may have mentioned in some of our contests, he'll ask me, or Ken Kavula will ask me for a number of stocks, typically 5 stocks for whatever contest we're running, and that is how I make my decisions. I typically narrow my screen to 5, 6, or 7 candidates, and then I make sure that the commentary on either of those doesn't sound completely contrary to what we're looking at here, and then I submit my choices. And unfortunately, if I had invested in exactly those companies in the contests that I've been playing, I would have done significantly better than my convoluted methods that sometimes compete for my investing attention. So when I'm making decisions for my child's account, I tend to stick to what I have found works for the contest. And this is typically a shopping list that I would look at. So I might expand it a little bit. We note that AVAV is here, and that might get my attention. I'd probably want to see a few more candidates, so I'd probably loosen this up just a little bit and try and get some more ideas on the list. But between 2 kids, working on the website, and all the other things that we do, my investing time is remarkably short. So I tend to come in and make a decision quite quickly with just a few outside sources of information. This really helps narrow the playing field and set my make an easy goal. If I only have to look at 5 or 6 companies before I know I can likely make a decision, it makes the job a lot easier for me. So.
And several of those companies have been covered or are fairly widely followed in the community between stocks that we have featured for study every month and then the various portfolios. Henry Fallon has asked the question, can you edit the yield on cash? And with a follow-up question, could you have more than one yield for multiple cash entries? And I guess I'll just answer for you, Kurt, and give you a chance to catch your breath. No, we basically pull a kind of a universal money market yield, which is very, as all of you know, very close to 0 right now. There is a way around that, and I've actually started, we're going to be into the next phase of development here at Manifest very soon. For instance, in some of my accounts, I'm actually using a high yield, it could be anything, but I'm using in fact, Kurt, why don't you just go into one of these sample dashboards and input the ticker DODIX, and that's a Dodge & Cox income fund. And obviously you want to put the number of units that you have, but you could throw a couple units at it. And this will demonstrate for you, Henry, how you might take something like this. This is not, I don't believe we even cover it, but what it does allow you to do, maybe we do, we'll see here in a second. What it does allow you to do is to have, as you can see here, a different yield on the Dodge & Cox income, or actually just a place to hold it. Very soon we'll be adding a place where the yield will show up here, but that's the way we'll be able to handle multiple yield instruments within an account. For right now, it keeps track of the cash, and actually in my Groundhog account, I've actually been holding my cash in the Groundhog account in this particular mutual fund. Okay, Geraldine would like to know what is rank. Okay, when you go to the search, as Kurt is showing right here, the stock search, and yeah, in fact, he's going to go ahead and do it, Kurt. He's going to show you accessing it through the glossary.
So
actually through the site search.
one of the features that we've added to Site Search is that it pulls anything that it finds from the glossary and it'll stick it on the sidebar automatically. So instead of clicking on Help and Glossary and finding the term, you can often come to Site Search and simply hit the right keywords and find it. So what we do with the manifest rank is simply rank all of the companies in our database from 0 to 100. And companies, it's a mathematical formula combining the quality and the PAR of a company. Companies that are too far out of the sweet spot get penalized, so you don't see too many companies above the sweet spot when you tighten up the rank. And it's simply a quick way to find the cream of the crop. Mark's, what he calls the ivory screen, is looking for manifest rank of 99.4 and up, and that's often a great starting point before you have other considerations, perhaps more growth, dividends, yield, that sort of thing. You want to comment on Jerry's question, Mark?
Okay, Jerry is basically saying that Cognizant Technology is a hold according to his own toolkit analysis. Are you anticipating that it could come down into the buy range at some point in time? Is Cognizant in this one? Okay, here we go. Actually, we think it is in the buy range. What you probably want to do, Jerry, is compare your estimates. Again, keep in mind that our estimates are the consensus of several different sources, including Value Line, Standard & Poor's, and Morningstar. And you might want to take a look and compare the judgments in your study. And I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying compare versus what we call them rhinos, as you know. Compare the growth estimates, the profitability estimates, and the PE estimates, and see if you can spot, what would be the difference, and what might be generating that signal from your analyst stock analysis software versus what the consensus is. And again, sometimes that can be a major opportunity or keep you out of trouble. So again, in this case, we're looking at a 20% growth stock. That's pretty ambitious, and again, that's the analyst consensus. Net profit margins of 14, those are probably also pretty robust, probably headed down if I had to make an educated guess, and a fairly decent average PE ratio, so that does add up to a fairly high projected return. You'll see a similar return from Infosys Technology right now also. Click on software consulting on the industry and show us a quick industry snapshot. In fact, if you click on quality and sort by descending quality curve, you're going to basically be looking at two of the best in the business right up at the top there, along with a few more just a couple slots down that right now seem to have fairly elevated returns according to all the analysts who follow the company. Any other questions or comments? Where else would you like Kurt to go to take a look? And he's not exaggerating. When he hands in his groundhog selections, it takes him between an average of 5 and 6 minutes to do it. 5 tickers. And he's in the top 10 all time. All-time returns, top 10.
So one of the other things that I did want to take a minute on, and what I'd like to do eventually is perhaps link directly to these, but we mentioned the technical side of it from time to time on the forum, and I thought perhaps you could take one of those and show where you get those graphs from and perhaps provide a little bit of commentary on what that might mean. It's another way of finding or seeing market sentiment when you're trying to make a decision, in my opinion, and one that I don't know as much about, obviously, as you do. So.
Okay, well, we can do that. We do have a question from Sylvia that wants us to explain the quality rating of individual stocks. Do you want to switch the screen to me and I can take it from there?
Sure, go ahead. Do you want to grab it?
Yeah, let me. Oh, I've got it buried. Hold on. I have to unbury myself. I think you should be able to see that.
Yep.
All right, Sylvia, here's a graphic which just kind of helps to remember what we're talking about here. When we're talking about quality, our definition of quality of any company is based on the definitions rendered by Benjamin Graham, who's the person who taught Warren Buffett how to invest, and the grandfather of the modern investment club movement, at least one of the grandfathers, George Nicholson. And both of them centered in pretty tightly on 4 characteristics, the 4 that you see there kind of in the jigsaw puzzle. The financial strength of the company, and literally the financial strength is the strength of the balance sheet. How strong is the balance sheet? How strong, does the business look from an opportunity perspective? Are they in a growing industry? Do they seem to capitalize on opportunity? All those type of things go into the financial strength. And again, just like with everything else at Manifest, we take a look at Value Line's interpretation of their financial strength, Morningstar's financial health. Standard & Poor's has a quality rating attributed to the financial strength of the company. We do that too. So that's the first one. The second part of the puzzle is the earning stability. And literally looking at that picture as you see right there, it's literally the consistency or the straightness of the lines, of the trend lines. So the earning stability is an important part of the company quality also. And then we take a look at the growth forecast and the profitability forecast for the company, and we make a relative comparison, just as it says over here on the right, a relative comparison to other companies that are either competitors or in a peer group or within a similar industry. And those 4 things are basically scored. We score them from 0 to 100 and issue them for all approximately 2,500 companies that we cover. So that's where the quality rating comes from. It's a very unemotional, very mechanical thing that we do using those 4 characteristics. Now, one of the other things that Kurt wanted me to take a look at is to go ahead and go into perhaps a technical analysis. Let's go ahead and use the company that Jerry was talking about just a few minutes ago, Cognizant Technology. We are not at Manifest Investing with this chart anymore. We've gone to a separate site. This particular website is free, stockcharts.com, just as you see up there at the very top. Now, I have a subscription, so I can do a couple of extra features that the average user can't do. For example, my time frames can be different. I think with the free version, you're limited to a 3-year historical period. You can see that I've got about 5 years. It's actually a 5-year look at the stock price chart for Cognizant. And basically we use the technical analysis for a very dirt simple interpretation or implementation of support and resistance concepts. Basically when we see a relative strength index, when it gets up above 70, that's what this line is here for 70, we see a stock that could potentially be running into resistance. And in this case, you can see that the stock price was relatively flat and actually went down. There was actually a pretty good sized flat spot back here when it maxed out here. And then at the opposite end of the spectrum, and by the way, when you hear people on TV talking about a stock being overbought, that's what they're talking about here. It went up fairly kind of like a rocket for a period of 3 or 4 months here. And the price kind of gets ahead of itself. So that's what they mean by overbought. At the other end of the spectrum is oversold, down here less than 30. This was oversold. This was potentially oversold back in here. So this is a point in time where we probably want to take a look at our fundamental analysis with Cognizant Technology at 55 back in the autumn of last year. And again, we would regard this as a support level, as measured by the relative strength index. It's kind of a momentum type indicator. Let's take a look at another example where we have people right now in the groundhog contest looking at a company by the name of Buffalo Wild Wings. I'm going to go ahead and switch the years here to, bear with me here for a second, switch it to a little bit tighter range, so we're only looking back over the last year. So this is Buffalo Wild Wings over the last year. And what you see here is some of the people who were fortunate enough to pick the Buffalo Wild Wings in the groundhog contest at the beginning of February have already seen a price gain of a lot. And they're basically wondering, is it overbought? And the chances are it is. Chances are that Buffalo Wild Wings will hit kind of a wall or a ceiling, if you want to think of it that way. And there actually are people that are thinking about using trailing stops to protect their gains, and looking at charts like this to try to determine what they might do. Some people are actually looking at possibly putting in a protective programmed stop, a programmed sell, if Buffalo Wild Wings were to drop down about 10 or 15% from where it's at right now. So again, we encourage people to spend some time over at stockcharts.com. And again, this should be I would regard this as the fine-tuning part of investing. I don't think this is where you start. I think this is where you kind of finish the job. I generally use it as a tiebreaker. If I have two stocks that are comparable when it comes to my stock studies, and the return forecasts are the same, quality looks good, I might come here and look for one that might be oversold in comparing the two, and get into it more when it's on the oversold end of the spectrum. The other thing that I would point out is if a lot of this stuff is new to you, they have an awesome chart school over here. Go into the chart school. You can actually search for, you heard me use the term relative strength index. Go ahead and enter that. They'll refer to it as RSI also. But go ahead and enter the term, and you'll see that you're actually taken to some educational tutorial articles. And this is the one I would recommend as you try to understand why were we even talking about that? Why were we looking at it? This takes you through a description of, what it is, and a little bit of an explanation as to how you might interpret it. So I would highly recommend that you do that. And included with this tutorial is a time when it describes the type of companies, and by the way, Cognizant Technology would be one of them, where you pay a little bit less attention to it because it's a high momentum stock that doesn't show any signs of weakness here yet, and that's what this is talking about here. A lot of momentum. You can ignore some of these, and it basically teaches you how to read that. All right, we're at about 45 minutes. Any other questions from the audience? I don't see any hands up. Kurt, did you have anything else you wanted to cover?
You haven't made any other major additions to the site lately, but I'd be happy to cover any other questions. I don't see any popping up at this point, so I might go make sure my snowblower is working so I can clear my driveway of the foot of snow we're supposed to be getting in the next 8 hours.
Good, clean fun. We need the exercise anyhow. Well, I think with that, we'll go ahead and sign off. One of the things I would encourage everybody to do is if you have a topic that you'd like to see covered in greater detail, please go ahead and send it to us. As you can tell, we will focus in on, during these sessions, just about anything that you want to. Just let us know what you would like us to focus in on, and we look forward to hearing what you guys want to see.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
With that, thank you, Kurt.